Welcome back to Bloody Besties with your hosts, Ruby Wild.
And Melissa May.
All right, we decided to change things up just a little bit today.
Yes, today I thought would be a good day to give our listeners a sneak peek into what's coming up in the future. We're going to bring you true crime news segments called Bloody Highlights. To kick it off, I would like to present you a cold case that has recently popped up on my radar, and it involves a trucker.
As a very appropriate because that is still the topic if you've been paying attention.
This is our final trucker.
I mean, it's definitely not the final trucker that is a murderer, but it's the last one that I had it in my soul to research.
Take a break from that. This story comes from Midland County, which is in Texas.
Oh, okay.
The sheriff's office continues to investigate the homicide of Austin Wynn, 26-year-old man. The incident occurred on Mother's Day, May 12th, 2024,
So just last year.
last year, between the hours of 9 a.m. and 11 a.m. It was on the block of WIH 20 near Flying J Pilot Travel Center in Midland, Texas. How sad on Mother's Day.
Right? Like that is not something that you want to hear or have done. Did he have kids?
He did not.
Okay. I mean, I shouldn't.
Well, actually, I don't know if he had kids. I don't think he did. I think he had a girlfriend.
Okay.
Yeah,
I mean, not like it
that
makes it
doesn't
any
matter.
better. He still had a mother.
Right. And he
So,
had texted his mother that day of to say Happy Mother's Day, and he was on his way home from. Well, let me get back into it.
yeah, thanks for pre-breaking my heart.
Right. Upon arrival, officers found Austin, who had suffered a gunshot wound from an apparent drive-by shooting and was lying on the ground outside of his 18-wheeler. Austin was a third-generation livestock hauler from Oklahoma who had just finished hauling horses at the time of death. Family members said that he runs that route from 1 to 3 times a week and always stops at this place to get his fuel on the way home.
Hmm.
As of March 15th this year, there is a cash reward of $7,000 if your tip leads to an arrest or case solved. This is coming from Crime Stoppers.
Okay, somebody knows something. I mean, come on.
And with Crime Stoppers, you're always anonymous. You can submit your tip with them. There's no caller ID. If you have any information, please call Crime Stoppers at 432-694-TIPS or www.694tips.com. I'll post this story on our Instagram, which is bloodybesties.truecrimepodcast.
All right. So that was your topic for the day is
That was a
technically
terrific trucker. Now let's get back into terrible truckers.
yes. Yeah. So we plan to do an entire, like, we'll say episode a month. That is where Melissa May decides to present headline cases to me because I don't, she makes fun of me for this. I don't do the news because it affects my mood. Yet I write 2 different true crime podcasts and I listen to it all day, every day.
And works in it.
And I work in it. But for some reason, if I read the news, it affects my mood and I don't like it. So Melissa May is going to be presenting all this stuff I don't know about.
Right.
And also, we did get a little bit of feedback that our sound quality is not the best that it could be, but that's because we don't have a cumulative $400 to pay for better mics. So if we have, let's say, a sugar daddy out there or independent sponsor or whatever that you would like to pay for new mics for us, we would greatly appreciate it. And if not, just start spreading word of mouth to all your friends. And once we start monetizing, we'd be able to afford it and get you guys better sound quality.
Sounds like a free commercial every episode if anyone wants to sponsor it.
I mean, I'm down. I'll even write it for you. You just have to tell me the product and I will write a commercial for you.
Correct.
All right.
You ready for a fun fact?
Oh, I get both?
You get both.
I'm so excited. I was not expecting this. Hit me.
I'm the one that's going to be dry mouthed today from kissing so much.
I love it.
The fun fact about truckers is that they drive an average of 80,000 to 110,000 miles annually.
Ooh.
That's enough to go around the globe 5 times. The trucking industry consumes 50 billion gallons of gasoline annually.
Ooh. Like for me, I drive an hour to work each day. So round trip, 2 hours, and I still am only at maybe 25,000 a year of mileage. That's insane. I don't like driving enough for that.
I get tired.
Miss
That's why I have to bring
same.
a dog every time we come to record.
Yeah.
Today's guest is Nucky.
Yeah. He'll be on our socials because he's passed
Adorable.
out. And my dog, Rebel, she's always with us, but she is passed out in front of our little space heater because basements get cold and it's rainy and stormy.
And I'm wearing a turtleneck sweater.
I know we should be getting into this, but I've got like that sensory issue. So I see you with your turtleneck and I'm jealous because I've always wanted to wear one, but every time I put one on, I like stretch it out into a cowl neck.
Oh no,
I can't handle things touching my neck like that.
it's so soft.
I'd like to say that it's because how my umbilical cord was wrapped around my neck and it made that scar. So if you ever see my socials or anything and you see that red mark on my neck, that's what it's from. And so I think it's just residual trauma that I don't want something to touch my neck. It's constricting. I'm dying.
Memories. Oh, because you have a crazy memory. You remember your birth.
I
Remember?
I told you that I don't remember my birth, but I told you what my very first memory was.
Yes, I forget. But
I
yeah.
was still in my crib, meaning I was less than 2, and I remember staring over my crib wall at my sister who I was sharing the bed with. And I remember it was a yellow bedroom and where my crib was and where her bed was, and yeah, I couldn't have been more than 2 because I was in a crib. It was pretty
Some people
insane.
keep their kids in cribs longer.
Oh, my mom did not. No.
I get maybe once you start crawling out of it is when you advance to like a little bed, but we don't know because we don't have kids.
Right, and we're also Gen X, where we're the feral generation, where
Yes.
all right. You guys aren't here for our little banter. Maybe you are. I don't know. Either way, you're getting it. But we are going to jump into the fourth and final installment of Terrifying Truckers in this series. No time for any more small chat, and we're going to be rolling along. Get it? Pun intended. With some more of our creepers and a few bloody briefs again. We're going to start out November 4th, 1998, in Eureka, California, when a man walked into Humboldt County Sheriff's Office with a severed woman's breast.
Oh,
Yeah, I decided to come out swinging on this one. hmm He followed this with his confession that he had actually killed not one, but 4 women. And police could hear a record screech as they needed to know what was happening, right?
yeah.
This is just insane. Well, this man who walked in was Wayne Adam Ford. He was born 1961 in Petaluma, California. His parents had divorced when he was 10. His father did remarry, much to the upset of Wayne. When he was 18, he had been struck by a drunk driver and he suffered a severe head injury. As sometimes happens, those close to him say that his personality began to change at that moment.
Wayne did.
hmm
Was it his frontal lobe?
I didn't get the specific on that, but I'm gonna assume.
Isn't that what they say? Gets damaged and
Yeah.
makes you a murderer.
I mean, thank goodness. And all my concussions.
Allegedly.
Yeah. I mean, I've gotten a lot of concussions and I'm hoping my frontal lobe ain't damaged.
Mine are all in the back, so I'm good.
Well, that's what happens when you fall off a horse.
I get headbutted, get all the things.
After this accident, he dropped out of high school and enlisted in the Marines. He served for 6 years and was honorably discharged in 1985. But it wasn't like one of those, you did great, we'll see you on your way. He was actually discharged because of his mental health, and then he started accruing infractions. So it was kind of one of those, how about you peace out before anything bad happens? Because we can see the writing on the wall. That's kind of where they were at. Before his discharge, he actually had married Kelly Pletcher, and that was because they had met on a blind date, which I don't think that those even happen anymore. I wouldn't know. Neither one of us have dated in what
20,
I was going to say a couple decades.
yeah, 20 years.
Yeah,
Well, no, yeah, more than 20.
yeah, I'm 26, whatever.
Mhm.
More than some of our listeners have been alive. We've been
Yes.
Wait, how old's marketing Megan now? She's in her 30s at least. Okay. I just treat her like my daughter. She's not though. After they met on their blind date, they eloped 2 months into meeting, and that was in Las Vegas, Nevada, in 1981. That marriage, however, didn't last, and they divorced in 1984. After his discharge, he decided to become a long haul trucker, and he was driving lumber between Oregon, California, Nevada, and Arizona. That was when he found wife number 2, Elizabeth Alt, who was 21. They were introduced by a mutual friend and they married in 1994. They had a son together the following year, but they didn't make it either, and they split up in 1996. The divorce was finalized in 1998. and she was able to maintain custody of their son. The timing will be of no coincidence because, as you remember, this whole thing started November 4th, 1998. So, remember how he walked into the sheriff's office on November 4th, 1998, and he said that he had killed four women? Well, he decided to start at the very beginning, and that was October of 1997. That was when a duck hunter, Ryan Slow, had found a woman's body in Humboldt County. She was a Jane Doe until 2023, when forensic genealogy closed her case using DNA from her sister Kathy. She was identified as Carrie Ann Cummings, who died at the age of 25. Her family last heard from her when she was couch surfing in Oregon. Her family stated that she had a mental disorder, which is why they believed that she had cut off contact. But before, they said that she was beautiful and funny and smart and an artist. They said that they tried to report her missing, but no police department filed a report ever. They said that she was an adult, and if she didn't want to be found, basically, she was a voluntary missing person. And we hear this a lot, and it's unfortunate. It's true.
Yeah.
I mean, anybody's allowed to go missing if they want to, but I feel like the record should be there just in case. Without a missing persons report, you can't really identify these John and Jane Does because they have nothing to compare it with. And they don't know, like, you can have your descriptors. You can have, somebody's 5'3", 135 pounds. They had gone missing at this point, hair color, clothing. Without having them reported missing, you just don't have this to fall back on. So it's
And
a
you
real shame.
don't have to wait 24 hours. I
Absolutely not.
just heard that the other day.
Oh, no. And yeah, you just force them. You
Talk
you
to a
know your family.
supervisor. I don't know.
Yeah. You know your family, you know their lifestyle. And even if they're adults, you say, "Look, I understand that you think this. Let's go ahead and file it anyway."
Because I know my person more than you do.
Right. And we're going to get it in the system just in case.
And then I've heard people that call the news because the police won't do anything. They call the news station
I mean, do what you got to do. This
and
is
they
your
do it.
person. This is your human. Like, you get to do it. Police were wrong that she was a voluntary missing person. She had been raped, murdered, dismembered. She was left without her head, arms, legs, and breasts. She had been stabbed 27 times in the back and the butt, and she had been cut straight down her middle. Her identification needed to wait so long because there was obviously nothing to fingerprint. Hands were missing, no dental records. Her head was missing. She had no tattoos, no medical defects on her torso. And 3 months after she was autopsied, her arm and hand were found near a beach, but due to decomposition, they were unable to be used for identification.
Do you think that she had implants and he thought that they had serial numbers on them or something like that?
Don't know, but we absolutely can check that stuff. Oh my gosh. Okay. So you know that I went to the body farm in Knoxville, right?
Yeah.
And one of the decedents there did have implants.
Breast augmentation.
And I don't want to disrespect this person, but the implant wound up on the outside of her body and it had broken open, but you could still see that it was the implant. So even if they get popped or anything and left out of your body, you can still find um, the serial number and everything that's on the bag that's in there.
Nice.
So that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
I mean, like I said, trying not to disrespect, but her donating her body to science let me know that, what's a possibility that you could even just find breast implant casing
Yeah. So
anywhere.
I'll be able to be identified.
Absolutely. I think that we're very identifiable with our tattoos anyway, and I definitely am identifiable with my surgeries and my dental records. Oh gosh. But yeah, so theoretically that's possible. It also could just be a fetish where, I mean,
Right.
this is a guy who literally walked into a police station with a breast.
Dude.
She was just the beginning because Tina Renee Gibbs, 26, a sex worker, was found floating in an aqueduct near Buttonwillow, California, June of 1998. Her autopsy showed that she had been strangled and raped and murdered days before she was found. She was identified by her fingerprints, and she had been from Tacoma, Washington, and had been working in Las Vegas when she had gone missing. 4 months later, September 25th, another nude body of a woman was found in an irrigation ditch off I-5 near Lodi, California. Items were in the vicinity of her, including women's clothing, a tarp with blood on it, hair, a white plastic bag from the Flying J truck stop, hey, and some jewelry. Flying J is really important to truckers and
They
Lowe's
must have
or Loves.
they must have good amenities there.
I mean, yeah, Flying J, Pilot, Loves, and there's one more that I'm forgetting. TA?
Yeah.
PA. She had been dead for several days, and there was a puncture mark on one of her breasts. It appeared that she had been suffocated. Her prints were taken, and she was identified as Lynette Dion White, 25, from Fontana, California. Her cousin said she had last been seen September 20th as she was headed home or headed to the store to get milk for her baby. She never made it back home. So sad.
So, what was the town again? Oh,
Which one? Where she
you
was
just said.
found?
Yeah,
Lodi. But she's from Fontana.
Fontana. Okay, Fontana is way south, and Lodi is way north. So he's just traveling all up and
Mm-hmm.
down the coast,
Really indicative of a long haul trucker.
right?
Now, next was Patricia Ann Temez, 29, a sex worker from Victorville, California, who had become addicted to drugs and, according to her family, also had mental health problems that would lead to her being institutionalized prior to her murder. On October 22nd, 1998, she was last seen looking for customers when a man in a black truck pulled up. Two security guards at the aqueduct saw her body near a pump hose, and police were called in. It was then that they saw she also had a breast missing. She had been bound and raped, and she had suffered blunt force trauma to her head, and then she was strangled. Her back was broken.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, she had been brutalized. In the aqueducts, they also found a bloody towel, a blouse, pants, and a 22 caliber air pistol. So a little BB gun. Mhm. Wayne Adam Ford called his brother, Calvin Rodney Ford, one day from Trinidad, California, saying he had to tell him something. Rod made it to the lodge where his brother was, and that was on November 3rd, 1998. And they started talking for hours. And finally, Wayne told Rod, I hurt people. And he didn't want to go any deeper into the confession. So Rod switched gears and tried to get him to talk to the police instead of him. Wayne agreed, and that was the day that he walked into the sheriff's office with the rest.
Whose
So
whose breast was it?
we know, hang on, I'll get there
Okay.
somewhere. But it was all because of Calvin that he decided, or Rod is what he went by, that he turned himself into the police. When he sat down with the police, he confessed to all four of the murders. He said that he turned himself in because he feared that he would eventually kill Elizabeth, the second wife, and that would leave his son an orphan. He had animosity towards her because after their dissolution of marriage, I can't say that word, dissolution of marriage, dissolution, like the breaking apart of their marriage. She was limiting his access to his son. And during the trial, she said, "No, I didn't limit it. He chose not to be a part of his son's life, and he was blaming it on me." She's like, "I never stopped trying, having him from having a relationship with his son." He agreed to lead police to the lakes of Kerry, and then he said that he buried her head and arms near Mad River, and the rest he kept in her freezer for a bit before he buried them at a Trinidad campsite. They never located her head, but they did find what was left at the campsite. He said he picked up Carrie when she was hitchhiking near Eureka. He said he took her home, had sex with her, and then in the process of that, he strangled her. He said she was the only one that he dismembered. He used a saw and a knife. He said the other three went much the same way. He was having sex and he strangled them. Police went and searched his trailer and they found a coffee can that contained another breast. There was a bag from the Flying J, and they took his freezer where he stated he had stored their body parts. His semi truck was also searched, and he said that he would drive around with the dead women for days before he would dump them. He was charged with only one count of first-degree murder for Carrie because the other murders were in different jurisdictions. So here's the thing. In I'll get to it in a second. Okay. So there's a turn of events. There was a serial killer law that was passed around 2 months after he was arrested. And that law stated that you can combine all victims, regardless of the jurisdiction that the murder or the finding of the body happened. Like initially, he was charged with only one, but he was then moved to San Bernardino County to be charged with all four murders. And that happened April of 1999. It took until 2006 for the trial to start, and it finished with him being found guilty of first degree murder to all four women. He was sentenced to death, and he is currently serving his time in San Quentin at the time of this recording. And that's because there is no more death penalty right now in California.
Ridiculous.
I'm going to keep my thoughts to myself because I like my job. I'm just stating it out there.
Okay.
So no, I don't know which women's breast it was because he removed a couple and then he still had one stored.
Yeah.
It didn't get into specifics, but all four women, their murders were solved when he
So
turned
only
himself in.
one dismemberment, like removing breast isn't considered, you have to like cut through joints or something? I would feel like,
I think that's just a mutilation.
okay. Oh, yeah.
I think dismemberment is when, yeah,
Like
you're
arm
taking off appendages. I
bones.
think.
Goodness.
Sure. But I would say that it's mutilation because the majority of the times that I see anything like breasts removed or whatever, it's just mutilation or like if your innards are removed and moved to a separate location. I don't know the technical term behind that. If
Yeah.
we have any lawyers listening, let me know.
Or getting the people that do the death investigators and like,
Coroner and medical examiner,
exactly, they know all those words.
maybe if we have those.
We need Joseph Scott Morgan.
Yes. I do know I've got a couple of morticians in our circle. In fact, this is a good segue. A couple of our friends have decided to pretty much make a YouTube for us. And instead of just seeing our
Audio.
logo and listening to our audio,
Yeah.
they're going to put some visuals on there for you guys to enjoy. So if you're more of a YouTube person, that should be coming out soon, thanks to Naughty Nature Productions.
Yeah,
It'll be exciting. I'm excited to see what they decide to do. It'll be fun.
it'll be good.
Not to mention, of course, if you subscribe, we could start raining in some nickels to get those good new mics. All right, we're going to move on to the next one, and we're just going to jump right in with Pamela Rose McCall, who was 32 and was pregnant when her body was found in the woods just off I 65 in Spring Hill, Tennessee.
What?
Middle Tennessee, which is our location.
I just drove by that town on my way here.
Don't tell them where you live. Don't tell them where I
I
live.
said I drove by it.
Um, and that was in 1991, March of 1991. She was last seen at a truck stop in Tennessee a few days earlier. She had neck injuries and had died from strangulation. Sperm was recovered from her pantyhose that were found with her. Pamela's case was reopened in Tennessee in April of 2019. Using the DNA from the sperm in her pantyhose, there was a connection to a suspect in two more murders that had happened in Wyoming in 1992, 400 miles apart. They are only know the other two are known as Bitter Creek Betty and I 90 Jane Doe.
Bitter Creek Eddie. I don't know.
Well, it's Bitter Creek, and then
Uh,
that's where she was found. I'd rather that than just Jane Doe. I don't know. It's kind of fun.
Bitter Creek.
Although we've already discussed, I would never be a Jane Doe, nor would you, unless I get skinned.
Ugh,
I'd have to be skinned.
and deboned.
Yeah. Yeah. I'd have to have all my teeth gone and my jaw skinned, certain body parts removed that the surgeries have been on. Basically, don't try with me.
Right.
I'm not your target audience.
No.
And Bitter Creek Betty was found by a female trucker. She was nude March of 1992 near the Bitter Creek truck turnout on I 80 in Wyoming. She had trauma consistent with strangulation, and her body was left in the snow for weeks. She was aged between 24 and 32. She wore a gold wedding band and had a rose tattoo on her right breast and a scar on her belly, possibly from a C section. A month later, Wyoming Department of Transportation found a partially mummified pregnant woman in a ditch off I 90. There was no cause of death listed, but she did have a head injury. She was between the ages of 17 and 23. She was wearing a pair of size 5 KO California blue jeans and Suwasi brand blue and white checkered blouse. And the reason that I say these things is because there have been many cases that they're connected based on the clothing description because people know what their missing person was wearing and the clothing that they owned at the time that they went missing. So I decided to include it just in case. We again have to bring up genetic genealogy, and that was where a relative of the profiles present. And with further investigation, they realized that their suspect was Clark Perry Baldwin, who was a former long haul trucker. They obtained a sample of his DNA from a shopping cart that he used at Walmart.
What?
They just stalked him. And then when they saw the shopping cart, they swabbed it
Okay.
and it was a match. He was arrested at the age of 58 in his home at Waterloo, Iowa, on May 6th, 2020.
I love Waterloo water.
Waterloo? Oh. You know what? I just got turned on to that because you know me, I'm a
I
fizzy water
love
girl.
it.
I don't like sweets
But it's not everywhere.
and it's too expensive.
I love it.
It's too
It's
expensive.
so good with vodka.
I'm just too cheap, man. $4 for 8 cans of water. I can't do it. I can't do it. I don't have it in me. And that lets you know what a government employee makes. $2 a beverage is too much.
And I'm on a fixed income.
Me too, if you think about it. All right. Now, who was Clark Perry Baldwin? He graduated from Nashua Plainfield High School in 1979, and he became a long haul trucker. In 1991, he was charged with the rape of a 21-year-old hitchhiker at gunpoint in Wheeler County, Texas. She was left alive to tell the police that her hands had been bound, her mouth was covered, and she had been hit on the head before being choked. He admitted, I said choked. That's wrong. I know this from forensic pathology. Choking is when you have an obstruction of your airway. Strangling is when there is an exterior compression on your airway. She had been strangled.
Suffocating? Suffocated have anything to do with that?
Suffocating is when your airways are obstructed.
Yeah, like, okay.
So, like, if
Pillowcase
a pillow
or
over your head. Yeah.
bags.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I'm sure there's other nuances, of course, that I'm going to hear about, but I'm okay with that. I welcome it. So, yeah, she had been strangled. He admitted to what he did, but he was released to wait for the grand jury. But the grand jury never happened because the victim just poof, disappeared, decided not to be a part of the trial. Unknown what reasons, and you can't compel people to testify if you can't find them. That's the problem. You can compel people to testify, but not if you can't find them to subpoena them, which is why I have to keep going back to California to testify because I'm easily found.
I hate that for you. That's like some mobster stuff where they threaten the witnesses, and then the witnesses are, when they actually do confess, they change their story.
Well, I told you about that one case that I testified on. Again, I always try to not give too much away, but the suspect had been known to have witnesses no longer able to testify against him.
Hmm.
So testifying against that person was a little bit scary.
John Gotti stuff.
Again, I'm not gonna go into any more details on that. But yeah, because she never showed up for trial, he never got charged with anything, and his criminal record was clear. In 1997, the Secret Service raided his apartment in Springfield, Missouri. And that was because he was making counterfeit United States money on his computer. He and two females were indicted. That was Casey Nicole Warner and Christine Jean Becker. He pled guilty and was sentenced to 18 months in prison and then released in 1999. After his arrest for this one, so 2020, he was set to go to trial, but there have been no new updates published on what's going on since then, but also no death report. So I'm just going to assume that the wheels of justice are still in motion because he was arrested during COVID. Again, if anybody's got Google alerts on everything that we're talking about, hit me up if there's new news. I cannot keep up with all of them.
I have my Google alert for Emily Pike, which is the indigenous girl who
Oh,
found the.
do that one on the headlines or the snippets next time.
Yeah, I just don't have any new news. It's just they're doing rallies to
And
raise
they're
awareness.
and they're looking into that home that she was in
Yeah,
finally.
yeah, the group home. And then I have the Google alert for Austin Wynn, hoping more stuff would come between when I wrote it and today.
Yep.
But I
Well,
could also do it for this person too, if you want.
sure, Clark Perry Baldwin. And then we have a few from last episode too. It's fine. It's fine. Somebody out there is going to hit me up. Please help. Help me.
I'm poor.
Mm. All right. The next case was solved by the licking of an envelope in 2002. In El Cajon, California, June 6, 1965. Cheryl Burnett, 19, was at home with her 2-year-old son when a man broke in through a sliding door and terrorized her while her son slept. She had been beaten with cocktail mix bottle, raped, strangled with a curtain cord, and other stuff that I could not find definitive evidence of. So I'm not going to report it because it seems like that might just be salacious reporting, and I'm not about that life. 2 weeks later, Luis and Lola Mercer, 62 and 57 respectively, had their house broke into. Luis was beaten over 20 times with a wrench that was left at the scene, and Lola was beaten and raped. She suffered brain damage, and Luis died. But as she was screaming, neighbors most likely heard that she'd been screaming, and the man got scared away. It is believed that the culprit entered the home after removing a screen from a window and climbed through. Around the same time, there was an attack, July 1965, when a nurse was attacked in her home in La Mesa, California. Her screaming had a neighbor come to help, and he scared the assailant off. the neighbor grabbed the license plate of the number of the vehicle that was fleeing. Police traced this plate to a man named Clyde Carl Wilkerson. He was brought in, and the nurse identified him in a lineup. For this crime, he was sentenced to 5 years, and it put him on the radar for the murders of Cheryl and Lewis and the attack on Lola, but there just wasn't evidence connecting him to the crime. Police had no leads, but they did collect their evidence and conduct their investigations. But the cases were destined to be cold cases for almost 40 years. What? He was released from prison in the early 1970s, and lo and behold, women were being attacked again. February 5th, 1975, Geraldine Ann Martin, 28, was a fun loving student at Tulsa Junior College, and then she went missing. She had twice been married and twice divorced, and she had been working at Tulsa's attorney's office, having moved to the city from Conway, Arkansas. She was on her way to meet a friend for dinner when she finished her classes, but when she never showed, the friend reported her missing. She was found 3 weeks later on February 25th in the vacant Osage Hills apartments by workers. She had been left in a closet on the second floor. She had been beaten and strangled and raped and had her breasts mutilated. And that was because the suspect had removed her nipples and areolas, and then he finally stabbed her. Her clothes were left near her, but her coat was not present. Police found her VW parked near the college, but nothing was in it. Her purse was found along the expressway with her car keys and glasses. And after she went missing, a man had tried to use her credit card at a department store. The clerk noted that the card was not a male name and there was possibly blood on the card, she said. So she called the police, but the man fled before they arrived. This same man had also cashed a check that was signed with the name Jerry Martin at her bank for $98. The employees that saw this man helped build a composite of him to distribute to the public. 3 months later, Marianne Hope Rosenbaum, 16, was a runaway from Tecumseh Correctional Home, and that was a correctional home for girls. And she decided to make her living as a go go dancer. She was dropped off by a friend around 1 a.m. on April 23rd, 1975. She had planned to grab some groceries before walking home, but she never made it back home. She was found the next day, nude, having been stabbed 65 times. She had been raped and strangled, and she was dead for about 6 to 12 hours only before a passing motorist on the other side of a barbed wire fence about 50 feet off the road had spotted her near Sapulpa, Oklahoma. She was still wearing a necklace and a bracelet. One wound severed her throat so severely that she had been almost decapitated. August 27th, that same year, brought tragedy to Susan Oakley. She was 24, had grown up in Amarillo, Texas. I kept wanting to say Amarillo,
One morning.
right? But I'm like, no, it's not the color yellow, it's the city. So, Amarillo, Texas. She had a brother, Chuck, and a sister, Sharon. She moved to Tulsa, Oklahoma for college and graduated from Oral Roberts University in 1972. She had an internship before being officially hired at Tulsa Metropolitan Area Planning Commission. People described her as a good soul who just wanted to help people. Every day she went on the same jogging trail before heading off to work. But August 27th, 7 a.m., was the last time she had been seen leaving her apartment. She was found near a trail along the road, raped, beaten, strangled with her own bra. She was left partially clothed with her hands bound. She was not mutilated, and that led police to believe that maybe the killer had been scared off in the middle of his attack. At the time, Clyde was living in Oklahoma, which is where the three homicides had taken place, but he wasn't connected to any of those crimes. He next hit the police radar when he was convicted of sexual assault in Arkansas. January 25th, 1976, he raped a woman at knife point, but he let her live. Unknown why. She went to the police and gave a description of him and his car, and he was arrested. This time he served 8 years before he was paroled. 2 years later, he was found guilty on assault in Texas. He was back in prison July 1987 for selling controlled substances, just to keep this guy in jail. In 1999, the 1965 murders of Cheryl Burnett and Lewis Mercer were reopened, and the DNA recovered from the murderers was run. I couldn't figure out what led investigators to compare their DNA to envelopes licked by Carl Wilkerson in 2002 to his former employer, but whatever. I mean, it just kept saying he was found by licking envelopes. And I was like, but why did they get the envelopes? I'm going to guess it was forensic genealogy or something. But this is in 2002. I don't get it.
Yeah, I'm confused.
I do my legwork on this. I could not find it. It wasn't even in any of the trial transcripts or anything.
So he was licking envelopes while in prison?
No, he was licking envelopes when he was at his home to send to his former employer. I think he was asking for some form of I think he was asking for some sort of like, yeah, severance documentation or something along those lines, and they were able to intercept the envelope. But whatever. They ran that DNA and it was a match to the two cases from 1965. He was arrested in his home in Benton, Arkansas, and transported back to California to stand trial. Now he's trying to talk into the microphone.
Just snit in the microphone.
Hi. He pled guilty to killing Lewis Mercer, and the murder of Cheryl was dropped because they didn't believe that they had as much direct evidence to connect him to her murder. And in reality, he really only needed one charge because he was elderly with heart disease. He received a life sentence with no possibility of parole for 7 years. After his arrest, the police started tracking his travels as long haul trucker because they didn't believe that the man who killed in 1965 would just stop. I mean, it makes total sense. So they decided after tracing, they ran his DNA against the cases of the unsolved murders along the path of his trucking route. They found another match. After this match was discovered, he took a plea in the first degree to the murder of Geraldine, which is the match, and he received life in prison again. And he did do life because he died in 2016 at the age of 77. And as of yet, he wasn't connected to any of the other murders. All right. This next one, it's not technically a long haul trucker, but it still counts to me.
Okay. I'm intrigued.
Yeah. All right. The story begins with Canadian couple J. Roland Cook, who was 20, and Tanya. Yes, it's Tanya, not Tanya. Tanya Van, I don't want to butcher this, but I want to say it's Queilenberg or Queilenborg. She was 18. The couple had been dating for 6 months, and on November 18th, 1987, they took the ferry from Victoria, British Columbia, Canada, to Seattle, Washington to go on a camping trip. The couple were known for being sweet and caring, and he played bass, like the bass guitar. She played tennis and basketball, and she dreamed with working with animals one day. And then while in Seattle, they were going to go pick up furnace parts for his dad. They were seen in Washington town of Hoodsport, arriving in their bronze Ford club wagon van. They asked for directions from a store clerk, and after that, they were never seen alive again. The couple were reported missing November 19th, so the day after, having never collected the parts or returned home. On November 24th, Tanya was found off a rural road near Mount Vernon, Washington. That's about 80 miles from Seattle. She was left partially nude with her hands zip tied. She had been shot in the back of the head and she had been sexually assaulted. November 25th, so the day after, under the porch of Essie's Tavern, which is 16 miles away from where she was found, the police found her wallet, the van keys, a surgical glove, some ammunition, and some plastic ties. That same day, the van was found in the same town with more zip ties and Tanya's black pants. Jay's body was found the next day, about 70 miles from Tanya's in Sonoma County. He had been beaten and strangled and bound with zip ties nearby, and there was also a pack of cigarettes that were shoved into his mouth.
Oh,
Yeah. That December, the families then started being taunted by greeting cards that described the murders with quotes like, Hallelujah, Bloody Jesus. And they were postmarked from New York, Los Angeles, and Seattle, and all were written by the same person. It took until 2010 to locate the writer, who was a Canadian transient at the age of 78 with mental health issues. He was not the killer.
sure.
hmm His DNA did not match the DNA that was recovered from the couple's murder scenes. He either was a jerk or just had the mental issues and didn't realize what he was doing was so wrong.
A jerk.
The DNA was recovered though. Like I said, it was able to be compared, and that was from the semen on the pants that were found in the van that were Tanya's, and they were uploaded into CODIS in 2003. There was no matches in the system at that time, but closure finally did happen in 2015 when Chelsea Rusted uploaded her DNA to GEDmatch, which I've talked about before. The Golden State Killer was found in April 2018 from GEDmatch, so the detectives in Tanya and Jay's case they get the DNA from the pants that were uploaded the same month as the Golden State Killer was found. This brought in Cece Moore, a genetic genealogist who found two people that could be second cousins to the suspect, one being Chelsea and the other being anonymous. And the good news is that they were from separate family trees, meaning that neither one of them were directly related. So she had to build out these family trees, and she was able to come to the common denominator of who linked the two family trees. Am I making
Yeah.
sense?
Yeah.
Okay. I was like the singular branch that made these other branches. And she was able to find that William Earl Talbot Jr. or the second. To me, that's junior. I don't know why they would go by second.
Well, because how are you going to have a third if you stop at junior?
Well, wouldn't it be senior, junior, the third? I don't know.
Junior the third? I
No,
don't
like
know.
junior, then the third.
Oh,
I don't know.
yeah, I don't know either.
I don't get it. But whatever.
I only know one person that has that. Like our friend is the third. It's only one person I know in my whole life.
Do I know that?
Yeah.
Did we go to high school?
No.
Yes, I got told offline who it was. Yes, I do know him. He is a third. He didn't name either one of his kids after him though, so
Oh,
he
he
cut the
didn't.
line. Yeah. Well, there we go. So for some reason, he goes by William Earl Talbot
Junior.
the second,
Second.
which I don't like him, so I don't care if I call him Junior. But it was time to get confirmation, so police tailed him until he threw away a cup, and they recovered it and swabbed it and compared it to the evidence. He was their man. He was arrested May 17th, 2018. He had no previous felony convictions, and that's why he was never in CODIS. He had only lived 7 miles from where Jay was left, and he was a delivery driver at the time and made his stops near the furnace store. So I said he's not a long haul trucker, but he was a driver of
Good.
and copious amounts of land, like did deliveries. So it counts to me, and I feel like their story needs to be told.
Just a long haul trucker. It's
Yeah,
fine.
because they're cute, and I like them, the couple.
Oh,
They were so cute. His family gave an interview about him stating this is William's family, gave an interview about him stating that he had anger issues. He had kicked his sister, Melina Grail, with his boots on. So she had to call the police and report him. He got into a shoving match with his disabled father when he was just 11. His father, the senior, his father, the senior, said that he and his wife, Patricia, got all the kids counseling after some of William's violent outbursts because he was that bad. Didn't seem to benefit him. At the age of 16, he told his father he would drive over him with his car as soon as he got his license.
oh,
He broke his other sister, Inga Routh's tailbone so badly that she had to go to the hospital when she was 15. We both know I've broken my tailbone a couple times, and
yeah.
it's not fun.
Stairs.
Uh, I fell down my basement stairs, and the other time was snowboarding. But falling down the basement stairs, that was could have been so much worse.
You gotta have more cushion on your cushion.
I don't need cushion on my tailbone area. I don't need a freaking tail. I- what I need is to stop being so clumsy. That's what I need.
You just can't help yourself.
Oh, by the way, I'm just going to tell you the basement stairs story. I was trying to be eager beef helper wife, and I was hurrying to go down into the basement to get my husband. It was a tool or something. And I tripped on a rug, and we don't have a door to our basement. It's just open doorway to stairs. And when I tripped on the rug, I literally just one in a million right down the stairs. And yeah, my poor husband, he had, bless him. He's the best. He's the one who convinced me I had to go to urgent care, and he was right. I was like, "I'm fine, just give me some aspirin."
Give me some wine.
I was not fine. I was not fine. Now I've got nucky hair all over my
Oh,
face. Back to our story, he broke her tailbone, and that fight with Inga was because she lowered the volume of the radio in her own room. She turned down her own music in her own room, and he wanted it louder. Yeah, so he broke her tailbone. And also, her room had been locked because she was changing clothes, and he was so upset that he broke her door down to do this. So, this is what type of man he is. She also alleges that when she was 11, William sexually assaulted her. And based on the life that he led after this, I believe her.
yeah, absolutely.
There was also alleged animal abuse with a family cat, not going into details about that.
You're done.
Now, because of all of this growing up problems, the family didn't have contact with him for 20 years prior to his arrest. They returned all invitations to pivotal moments in his family that included invites that they sent for weddings, graduations, funerals. So he was just as much at part for having 20 years of no contact as they didn't really want it anyway. His trial began June 11th, 2019, after his plea of not guilty. The trial came before the Golden State Killer, so no one was sure if the genetic genealogy results would be allowed in court. And that has to do with Daubert. I don't want to get too far into it, and I don't know if I've done that on this podcast before, but the Daubert ruling and the Fry ruling and the McDonald ruling. But basically, so like Tennessee is a McDonald state, but essentially what they are is they are trials that have established that if you are going to present any form of expert evidence, say in the field of forensic science, it needs to be well established in the scientific community and can be peer reviewed. And in the specific case of McDonald, like I said, which is in the Tennessee one, that you can't have done the tests, like the scientific tests, specifically for a court case. So basically, that's saying, like, say there's a problem with a certain type of insulin. This is not the McDonald case. The McDonald case has to do with railroad, but it doesn't matter. I'm trying to go off something that most people have knowledge of. So, say you've got insulin, and this one specific type of insulin caused the death, theoretically, of one specific person. Well, you can't go through and establish a new test method to test this one insulin for this one death because it was brought to trial. It has to be well established before that. That gives you a reason to bring it to trial.
Oh,
So it's a bunch of different court cases that we all have to pay attention to in the forensic community to make sure that what we are presenting is well established in the scientific community and that we are not violating any sort of preconceptions of anything that have happened. So that's the problem with genetic genealogy is there has to be a first case that establishes that this is an accurate forensic science.
right.
Well, the Golden State Killer hasn't already happened yet. This is the predecessor to that. This is the first case. So the defense surprised everyone by stipulating to the DNA because they said it was on the pants from consensual sex prior to the murder and had nothing to do with the murder. Have I ever explained what stipulated is?
I think so.
I mean, I know that
Sounds
you know what it
familiar.
is because your family,
Yeah.
but stipulated basically means I'm going to allow you to present this evidence without anybody having to testify on the behalf of the evidence, that it's just going to be allowed as a statement of fact. Well, they were saying, yeah, he did have sex with her, but it was absolutely consensual. The jury believed that there was enough evidence that after 3 days of deliberation, they declared him guilty, not believing that this was consensual sex.
Good.
And that led to the mandatory sentence of 2 life sentences without the possibility of parole. But we're not done yet because the appeals court overturned his conviction in 2021 based on juror bias. But the Washington Supreme Court in 2022 reinstated his verdict, stating that the defense truly believed that a juror that was biased would have been dismissed before they even sat them. It was only after the fact that they were like, oh, there was a biased juror. Yeah. He is left to spend the rest of his life at the Washington State Penitentiary in Walla Walla, Washington. Still love that name.
Walla walla.
And now moving right along because wait, there's more. A whole freaking scary lot more. This one.
Oh, let's go.
July 1st, 1978, in South Delano Beach, Florida, Edward Arthur Surratt was arrested in Florida when he passed out drunk in a house. Why is this such a big deal? He broke in, tied up the family of three, raped the mom, the 15-year-old daughter, and then he passed out after his crime. The father was able to break free of his electrical cords and ran to the neighbor for help. This man, Edward, was arrested at the time without incident. But who was he? He was born in 1941 in Pennsylvania, and his childhood was allegedly, according to him, very abusive. He did well in school until high school when he decided he would rather commit crimes rather than get an education. So he was arrested in 1959 for disturbing the peace, received no jail time, just a fine. He was then kicked out of school, arrested again for disturbing the peace. He then hit an arresting officer, and that led to a conviction of assault, sentenced to 14 months at the SCI Camp Hill Range. He somehow got into Youngstown University in Ohio, but again, just didn't want to go to school and was expelled in 1963. He was drafted into the Army in 1964, serving at Fort Dix in New Jersey. He injured a colleague with a pipe and abandoned his post. He was arrested for dangerous driving and illegal weapons possession. And for all of this, he was dismissed for the military. That was it.
The 60s are wild. You would
Very much
not
so.
be able to do this nowadays.
No. Okay. Did your dad serve in the military? Because mine did.
Yeah,
Yeah,
mine's a
that's
Marine.
right. That's right. And mine's Army. And from what my dad has told me about the military service, this would not be allowed.
No, well, not in the Marines.
Yeah. I mean, and yeah, my dad was in the 1960s. This was insane. But he was just let go in 1960. Did I get that right? 1965. All hope was not lost because he inherited his dad's business after his dad died from throat cancer. He ran the company into bankruptcy. He decided to re enlist, this time in the Marines.
Oh, shit.
So we got both. And that was in 1966. For this stint, he was sent to Vietnam in 1967. And in 1969, he was wounded in the chest and concussed after explosion. And that had also ruptured his eardrum. He was released from the military hospital in 1970 and sent back to the United States. For all his time of serving, he was actually served, or he was given the award for the Gallantry Cross and the Purple Heart.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. This man who had to get kicked out of one of the military services for assaulting and drunk driving and illegal weapons possession now is given the Gallantry Cross and the Purple Heart. It was then that he married and moved to North Carolina, where he decided to become a truck driver. He started showing signs of PTSD. Duh. I mean, he got blown up. And in 1973, he was arrested for attempting to rape a boy aged 13 in Virginia Beach, Virginia. He was found guilty and convicted and served 4 years in prison. He was released in 1977. And that leads us to where we were started with his arrest. That's a word. Arrest for the home invasion burglary with a weapon and the sexual assaults. His trial started in 1978, and on September 20th, he was found guilty of burglary, assault involving rape, and threatened to commit murder and was sentenced to 2 life terms with 200 years added on for good measure. But because we all know that I wouldn't be telling you a story this short, there's more. Before he was finally caught, he had done one more atrocious thing that had come to light. He was extradited to Lexington, Kentucky, South Carolina for another murder, that of Luther Langford, who was 66 at the
Wait,
time
wait,
of his
wait. You
death.
said Lexington, Kentucky, South Carolina? Which
Those
one
two
is
go
it?
together. Lexington County,
Oh, okay.
South Carolina. Sorry about that. Lexington, Kentucky is like what it's supposed to be, okay? So Luther Langford was 66 at the time of his death. He was seen driving around in a car that had been registered to him on June 6, 1978, in his hometown of Aliquippa. I want to say it's Aliquippa. The problem with that is Luther had been murdered at that time in his home in Columbia, South Carolina, June 1st, having been beaten to death with a baseball bat. His wife, Nell, had been beaten but survived her attack, and after the car was identified, police attempted to arrest Edward, but he was able to escape by hiding in a metallurgic plant. 3 weeks later, he was arrested for a home invasion, or the home invasion where he was caught. So he was found guilty in Florida and now to face charges in South Carolina for Luther's murder and the attempted murder of his wife. And for that, he was found guilty and given another 2 life sentences. But we're not done because in 1993, he attempted an escape from prison, but it was not successful because he was captured and they added another 2.5 years. After that, 2007, he decided to confess to more crimes, 6 more murders. On the morning of September 21st, 1977, in Beaver Township, Ohio, the Hamilton children woke up to find that their father, David, had been shot to death and left on the kitchen floor. Their mother, Linda, was nowhere to be found. Their car was found at the entry to an abandoned strip mine, and there were prints of man's boots and Linda's bare feet on the driver's side of the vehicle. As for where Linda was, Edward said during his confession, she's unrecoverable.
Oh, no.
Yeah. On October 21st, 1977, John Feeney, 17, his girlfriend Renee Greger, 16, were headed out for dinner in Robinson Township, Pennsylvania. The couple were not seen again after 10 p.m. that night, and after Renee's father reported her missing the next day, they found John, who had been murdered while behind the wheel of the van that he had been in. The motor was still running and parked in an area known as Lover's Lane. He had been shot in the right side of his neck at close range with a shotgun. Renee's jacket and purse were in the van, but she seemed to have vanished. And again, he told the police her body is unrecoverable.
What is he doing with them?
Usually that means like,
The river?
no, I would say like in the, not the junkyard. What's it called?
The mine? Keeps it in
Landfill.
the mine? Okay.
Landfill, usually.
I'd be like, try me.
Or
Let me
yeah,
decide.
or dismembered and like
Spread about.
distributed, things like that. But he did say unrecoverable. On November 10th, 1977, John and Marie Davis were found shot to death in their home, which was then set on fire. The couple was in their 60s, and they had been married since 1934. Yeah. They had three daughters and three sons, and there's more. Because in 2021, he had more to confess. Now, for the six murders, in addition,
Well, he's not getting out, so he might as well just spill it all.
which is pretty much what he's doing. So, John Shuckleton's 56. He killed with a shotgun in Pennsylvania, January 7th, 1978. He beat Catherine, his wife. She survived. Nancy and William Adams were killed November 20th in Pennsylvania. Adam was found in the home. Nancy was never found. New Year's Eve, 1977, in Pennsylvania. Joel Kruger, 36, was shot to death in a parked car along I-70. He was found by a truck driver. At the time, police had believed it was robbery. And 3 miles away, he had already killed Guy and Laura Mills, both 65. He had shot them with a shotgun. They were found around 7 a.m. the following morning. Their home had been ransacked. He has been a suspect of even more murders, but that is where the case and the victims stand at this point. But don't worry that we are done, because I am sure I will have another series coming up for you about a profession that has a lot of killers.
Right?
But yeah, so he's still alive and he seems to want to keep confessing. So we'll see if there's more, because
Did,
that was 2021.
did I did I tell you or did you know that my dad had a grenade go off in his back when he was in the
No,
Marines?
he doesn't look like he's like,
It from what I my memories living in our town we grew up in,
yeah.
he would be in the shower and the shrapnel would slowly work its way out and he'd be showering and it would just fall out onto the shower.
Oh my
And that
gosh,
was in the 90s.
that's crazy. Oh, I would have, yeah,
We were definitely hanging out,
yeah,
but
I'd spent the night at your house by then.
yeah.
Yeah.
I'll
Wow.
have to ask. I never really it's a weird line of asking about their history because you don't know if there was trauma involved being
Hmm.
in Vietnam. So I don't ask those questions, but he's going to be 70 soon. So it's kind of like I need to.
If you want to know, you got to ask.
I did buy my mom and dad those books
Yeah,
that they have to fill out.
I
So I'll
did
have to,
too, and neither one has touched it.
and I have the feeling that mine are the same way. So I'm going to have to go back and,
Yeah.
like, hey, while you're on your flight to Italy,
Yeah.
fill out your books.
Why is it so hard? Yeah. And I told you, I've got the cousin that was blown up twice because he got blown up the first time, sent to the hospital. They were like, we're going to put you on medical discharge. He's like, the fuck you are. I got to go back. And they were like, well, your entire crew is dead. They all
Oh,
got blown up.
wow.
He's like, I don't care. Give me another. He goes back in, like, at the time, I want to say it was Iraq or Afghanistan. He goes back and gets blown up again, has to
Oh,
get like his hand reconstructed. And then he finally was like, okay, I'll go home now.
was that Desert Storm or after
Mm-mm,
Desert? Okay.
mm-mm. He's younger than me.
Okay. So after.
Yeah. But we did have one. I feel really bad. He still has PTSD because the balloon popped when we were eating all together and he did not handle it
Oh,
well. But I love him. I'm proud of him. He's got a Purple Heart.
yeah.
He never talks about it with anyone ever.
Right.
Like even my sister, who's Marine, she didn't even know about it until we told her about it. Because he's like, yeah, it is. It happened. We're like,
Does he feel like your sister? I don't know what she did, but does he feel like she wasn't active combat or like
she
she
wasn't,
wouldn't
yeah,
understand?
yeah, she was not active
Yeah, I
combat.
can't imagine. But
But
he probably doesn't feel like she would get it.
yeah,
Maybe he just wants to keep it to himself.
that too. I'm sorry for spreading his tea, but you don't know who he is.
Exactly.
But anyway, thank goodness we are done with that series because you may not need a break, but I do because I drive by truckers all day, every day because I'm on a major interstate to get to and from my job. And every time I look at them while I was writing this, I was like, are you? Are you?
Yeah, that one stretch of interstate, I'm like, I hate this part.
Well, and then I have that major truck stop that's my same exit.
Yeah.
And all of these are happening at like truck stops and stuff. And I'm like,
On ramps and off ramps.
mm. But yeah, here's to hoping that we get closure on what Melissa May started the episode on. If you know anything, say something and get you money.
Call Crime Stoppers.
Yeah, it's a lot of money. Coming at you with a new topic next week.
Yay.
Bye.
Bye, y'all.
The views and thoughts expressed in this podcast are ours alone and do not represent the thoughts or opinions of anyone else. The information presented is for general information purposes only. We are not liable for anything you do with this information.
We're just gonna.
Walla walla. A fun fact about Tracker. A fun
I am getting so
I have issues.
distracted by Melissa May. It's like she's got a hair or a fur
Correct.
on her mic. And I just keep making eye contact with her, trying to like.
Cross-eyed looking at trying to find a hair.
And so if you're hearing in the background, and if you hear me keep pausing, it's because she is very distracting right now.
I got it. I think I got it.
Like, okay. I mean, I'd rather that than just this. Bleh. He graduated from Nashua Plainfield. William Earl Talbot. Well, I can't say his name.